I'm still not doing well. I haven't been able to sleep properly in days. And just the lack of dealing with wrestling these two fucking demons for however many days it's been has just worn me the fuck out. And even if I take my full dose of my prescribed sleeping pills and the maximum safe dose of melatonin, I'm still only getting like 6 hours of sleep, no matter how exhausted I am. And I'll get to the point of the title of this in a minute. I'm going to start with an update into the point I was going to make. If I lie down, try to take a nap, no matter how tired I am, I can get to almost asleep. But as you're falling asleep, you lose control of your mind. Like your thoughts wander randomly in that cusp of falling asleep. And the only way, the way I can get myself to almost asleep is to control my mind, to set aside outside problems, calm myself. Then I get to where I can almost fall asleep. The mind sort of lets go. Things that have happened enter my head. And anger wakes me right the fuck up. I can't sleep when I'm angry. I can sleep when I'm depressed. I can't sleep when I'm angry. That's how this morning was. I rolled over. You wake up just a little bit, you roll over and go back to sleep. And I tried to stop it. Don't think about any of it. Don't think about any of it. Just go back to sleep. That same thing. If I'm half awake, I don't have enough control over my mind. So bang, up. It's been enough days now that even when they're both gone, like right in this moment, I'm going to try to stay off the topic so I don't get upset. The rage demon isn't here. Screaming suicides aren't here right now. Okay, sorry. They're here, but they're not active. But even without them or without any other bother, I am in so much pain from just lack of sleep for too many days in a row. Which brings me around to what's the cost to society? Like the cost incurred by society that results from individuals mistreating people with a major mental illness. Hey, Gloff, hope you're well. I'm going to rant for a minute without paying attention to the chat. There's three kinds of costs to society. There's losses, there's opportunity costs, and there's maintenance costs. I'm not going to get into losses. Not because it doesn't fit into the category. If Richard Ramirez had been treated differently as a child, we may not have had the Night Stalker. So there are times when the way one individual, a small group of individuals, mistreat somebody causes losses in society, as in loss of life and damage, because we create monsters. Is the maintenance cost of the mentally ill. Mental health services, the effort family have to put in. But the one that's on my mind today is the opportunity cost. I heard a short interview. I don't remember who the fuck it was being interviewed. I don't remember who was doing the interview. But they were discussing Daniel Johnston. The person being interviewed had spent a lot of time with Daniel. I think had done a documentary on him or something, but he'd also looked into the connection between bipolar and musical genius. You're saying that with Daniel Johnston, you couldn't separate it. You know, there's Beethoven and Kurt Cobain and Jimi Hendrix and just a ridiculously long list of musical geniuses with bipolar. When they're up, they can do things nobody else can do. And when they're down, they suffer through the hell of it. A lot of us self-medicate. And that can go too far. That's where we lost Hendrix. A lot of us kill ourselves. And that can even happen when things are going well. Just the tango with this dragon of chaos. Bipolar is a dragon of chaos. Like in the myths, the dragon can destroy. Or dealing with the dragon right, you get the gold or you get the... And it's not just music and art like Van Gogh. It's the sciences as well. Isaac Newton, Cantor, who developed all the infinity theory and did so communicating with an angel. Seemed like bullshit to people when he invented it, but our mathematics built on it now. He was proven right. He died alone in a mental institution. The guy from A Beautiful Mind, that movie, I'm forgetting his real name. Actually, I think he was schizophrenic, not bipolar. But like the point of like Dr. Polomeni's work, Shamans Among Us. Yeah, and I won't go any further into that. I did a live stream once called The Silver Lining of Psychosis, where I discussed his book. But these major mental illnesses It's like they're not just a disability. They're a disability and a superpower. The connection between genius and insanity is really strong. And it's unfortunate that we don't know how to deal with this. It's unfortunate that we don't know how to optimally take care of people with major mental illnesses. If we could, how much harm to both the people with the illnesses and society could be reduced? How much more benefit could we get from the lunatic? But then there's one step worse. There's just the active mistreatment of somebody with a major mental illness. I forget who the fuck it is who developed the analogy of dandelions and orchids with child development. But it goes something like, badly rephrased, it goes something like, most children are like dandelions. The average child can do fairly well in like regular society and the anti-fragility shit that Haidt talks about. The average child develops properly with a balance of the good shit in life and difficulty. Human beings are anti-fragile. The average child grows stronger under certain stresses. But a minority of children are like orchids. Like dandelions grow fucking everywhere. Doesn't matter. Crack in the concrete, doesn't matter the soil. But orchids, under most conditions, just die. Orchids need to be babied. They need an environment that is overly sensitive to their needs, or very precisely attuned to their needs. And that those children, under normal circumstances, where other children would benefit from anti-fragility, is actually damaging to orchid children. And while dandelion children, you'll spoil them, by over babying them, like you won't. Yeah. The orchids thrive under that. And will have a tendency to usually develop very well in some area. Once you get to somebody older who already has a mental illness, I don't know, is that just the adult form of the orchid, or is that something different? Now, on the one hand, as poorly as I've done in response to outside stresses, that's only if I'm comparing myself to someone else. I'm comparing myself to I was, if I'm setting the standard based on me. Then I am shocked I am handling this as well as I am. But the truth of the matter is, I cannot handle outside stresses the way other people can. And the how well I'm handling this compared to myself in the past has nothing to do with being better. Well, like I am not less crazy than I was before. And it's not that anything hurts less. It's the thousands of volumes inside I have of meditation, mindfulness, the spiritual techniques. It's nothing hurts any less. I'm just getting better at bleeding, surviving it. So this morning I was thinking about everything that's been happening to me and the state I'm in and how to take care of myself and how to move forward. Felt guilt over the channel. Because there are a lot of times I'm really not sure that I'm not going to crack up completely, not be able to come back. And then I thought of that interview I watched a couple nights ago or whatever. Because the person was talking for a moment from the view of like society and what society gets from the artists who are bipolar. Talking about what a shame it is when they overdose or kill themselves. And he seemed very, very, very fucking sympathetic to the pain we go through. Because he's like, he just had this gratitude to the artist. So when he talked about the difficulties they have to go through, you could see that he found that heartbreaking. And then I looked at my situation and how I was feeling about the channel. And I've been thinking recently about something me and Dr. Amate discussed. It's on one of the just me and Dr. Amate did, or if it's the one we did with Nolan. But me and him discussed at one point that he brought up Eckhart Tolle and was kind of calling him out as like his teachings he feels are sort of abusive towards, like if applied in a clinical setting is like abusive. And me and him discussed how I took Tolle's side. I don't think I got into discussing it properly, but that's come to my mind repeatedly recently because there's two levels. On one level, Dr. Amate was absolutely right. On another level, what I responded with is absolutely right, or Eckhart Tolle is absolutely right. or within me internally, there is a part of me that it is not fair to say to that part of me, you need to see them as unenlightened. You need to love and forgive. You need to, because that's the part of me that feels the pain, and that's the part of me that's grounded, and it needs to have it recognized that what the other person did was wrong, and that it's understandable that anyone, even if you didn't have a mental illness, would be extremely upset, and it would interfere with their work and everything. And so this whole conversation, even with the opportunity cost to society, is on one level. On another level, everything happens for a reason. It's important that Hendrix OD'd, and it's important that all of the horror that goes on goes on. I'm not talking about the upper level, but I'm not dismissing that. Like, that all is true, and in fact, that all supersedes this. But this discussion is down in the lower level, where we talk as if we could do better, where we talk as if we should have averted tragedy, or we talk as if we should have done better, even though it all happens for a reason. So anyway, back into it. I overcorrect to the upper side. This entire way along, when an outside circumstance, and in fact, okay, yeah, I'm going to be marginally more specific here, but I'm not going to get into any of the details of the outside circumstances. But it boils down to 90% of my difficulties in outside circumstance result from one person. There is one person actively harming me. That if that one person was not actively harming me, the past 2 years would have gone very differently. But I hold myself to loving that person, forgiving them, doing the right thing, blah, 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 blah. Plus, I do not allow myself to think that it is that person's fault that I'm not working on the channel properly. It's my fault. The outside circumstances are exactly as they should be. I can't control others. I can only control myself. It is my responsibility to do the best I can from the circumstance I'm in. And that is a useful mindset. That it wasn't, but that other, the damaged part of me today needed me to look at it the other way. And I have never looked at it this closely the other way. If I step down from that high horse and I look at this, especially if I look at it from the point of view of dandelions and orchids, because they're point. Anyway. Last summer when this channel was, well, on one hand, when the channel was falling apart, but when me personally was building momentum, there was a point where I was working 80-hour weeks on this shit. I was doing private sessions or meetings with like volunteers working on videos or doing podcasts or like just the lunatic patrols. It was like 12 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. I blamed myself for that falling apart. But the truth is, just one person could have changed all that. One person has been actively harming me. And that one person doesn't care about any of you. They don't care if I shut down the channel and never do this again. And I'm not putting myself on the level of fucking like all the geniuses I talked about earlier. I was starting with the extreme examples. And now I'm tying it down into the situation of my life. May not be anything big, may not be a big deal. It's not a huge cost to society. But even though I feel really shitty about myself right now and want to like devalue what I've done, based on what other people have told me, I've helped a bunch of people through this channel. It's possible I'm more than earning my disability. I'm not that big a drain on society at the moment. I get a disability check, which isn't big, live cheaply. I'm a bit of a burden to my parents, but they love me and don't resent that. It doesn't detract from their productivity anymore. And it's possible the help I was giving people was at a point of more than making up for that cost, like as a return to society, whether it's the individual private sessions or the benefit of podcasts and the live streams. And 13 years ago, that wouldn't have looked possible. Like at the point where the government moved me to disability, I was a write-off for society. That's what putting me on permanent disability was. And like, honestly, the high hopes we had at first. By we, I mean me, my family, fucking psychiatrists. It was just to minimize damage. Like the therapists, the everything, the permanent disability, the point of that was do not try to contribute to society. Don't try to have a fucking job. Full time is take care of yourself because otherwise it's too fucking expensive. Well, because otherwise we have to take care of you. And I don't mean the way my parents do. I mean, otherwise I'm in and out of a fucking mental institution. And that's a much bigger burden on society. Because I'm not just a little bit crazy. And the same way that on one level, I can't take the blame fully for how bad I am now. If some shit was going better, I'd be producing much better. So on one level, I can't blame myself for my own productivity now. I also cannot credit myself for having gotten from that state 13, 15 years ago to here. At one point, I was given everything I needed. I was given the orchid environment. I didn't know that's what it was when they put me in it. Like, just everything put me in it. When I retreated from the world, it was in utter defeat because I didn't want to be an orchid. I didn't want to be insane. It wasn't what I wanted. But given the state I was in, isolation for me was a safe environment. Government put me on disability. Like, we didn't even request it. Government did it automatically. There was no fucking paperwork. There was no bullshit. There was no, like, that just happened. My parents rented me. It's little, not here, somewhere else, little place, middle of nowhere, close enough to them that they could, and they took care of everything. The first 2 years I was in isolation. Well, actually, a bit long. Anyway, fucking who cares? Not only did I not get my own groceries or anything like that, I did not handle my own money. I didn't even decide what my supplies were. Food just got dropped off. I didn't know at first what my rent was. I didn't know what my disability check was. But my parents just cashed my check, paid all the bills, bought me food that they know I like. So I didn't have to think about any of that. No phone, no internet, not seeing anybody. I needed that. I couldn't handle the smallest amount of pressure from society. Couldn't handle having people around. So I bet you there was a good 7 years at the beginning of all this that you never would have looked at me and thought, well, we got to make sure this guy keeps taking proper care of himself and keeps having the right environment. So there's a chance he could help people in the future. And the thing about the way I can help people, or with all the bipolar geniuses and all that shit, one thing about it is, it's not that I can help people more than the average person, like the average, like, because there's therapists, doctors, there's all kinds of help out there. But people have told me that I can help them in a way that they can't find anywhere else. And you wouldn't have thought that years ago. So how many mentally ill people are there? That we've thrown away, whether it's some small thing like me, where, perhaps I can help so that I'm more benefit to society than cost, but no big deal. So there's everything from down at my level up to fucking Van Gogh and Cantor, like major discoveries that changed science, major musicians, writers. What's been the opportunity cost of what not knowing what to do with those people? Like whatever small amount of good I've put into the world doing this channel, the truth is we would have lost that if what happened to me since then had happened before. If I had been mistreated worse 5 years ago, or if the support had disappeared, if the government had taken me off of disability, if my family died or turned on me and refused to, like, go back far enough, and if the support had not been there, I would be homeless or in jail or in an institution. Like, guaranteed. So how many have we lost like that? Like Peterson says, when you see some homeless schizophrenic muttering to demons only they can see on the street, what do? You avert your gaze, you go around them because we don't know what to do with that. When you look at the homeless population with a major mental illness, you can see some of the cost for society. But I don't think many people walk by somebody like that and wonder if there was an opportunity cost. Is there some bum somewhere right now lying in his own filth on the sidewalk, upsetting everybody, ranting about something? The cops are on the way. And that if that person had just had a better support or less damage done, might they be in a home? I don't mean an institution. Might they be in an apartment or a house somewhere, still muttering to themselves or talking to something that no one else can see, but instead of being covered in their own filth, upsetting people, they're painting. Writing a symphony. And what was the opportunity cost here? Because I have no idea where this channel goes anymore. There's a chance this is the beginning of the end of it. And there's a chance that I somehow get through this and I'm able to return to a productivity level I was at before and do even better. But it's not up to me. That depends on all of us. I can only do as well as I can do. If one person had simply not gone on the attack against me, the channel would be doing better. On the other hand, I don't know what's next anymore. I know firsthand you can get hit by a bus or hit by lightning at any moment. Someone can turn on you at any moment. There are infinite disasters. If they keep getting heaped on, I will break. If there's something new out of nowhere, which is why I have a really strong fucking fantasy right now. I've been spending a lot more time with wild animals here. I know a lot of fucking chipmunks. I know a squirrel, a groundhog, and I was out hanging out with them. And just this complete picture jumped into my head. I've gotten really good with wild animals. I'm surprised how fast I can tame a chipmunk now. First time I tried to tame a chipmunk, it took weeks to make friends with one chipmunk. Then it got to where it took days when there was a new chipmunk. This year, I've been able to go over to a different area and make friends with a chipmunk in a number of hours. There's been so many that it can't be all ones I know from other years. And part of it's practical, real world stuff about knowing how to interact with animals. And part of it's the magical stuff and the spiritual stuff. But just this complete picture of a completely different, living a different life just flooded my mind all at once. As if I could get a place, like a chunk of forest, deeper in the forest, somewhere here further away from any roads and fields, and to have a little cabin in the woods, or some stacked shipping containers or whatever, and to do a bit of research on black bears. Kind of den they like, all the foods they like, their behavior, what size territory that they have. So to do both the practical research and then to go out and instead of befriending frogs or squirrels or chipmunks or groundhogs, to dig out a bear cave. Yeah, and I visualize that I have my place at the edge of this stream. On the other side of the stream, just the right distance. Because a bear's den, it will have a perimeter that it doesn't want anything inside. And like usually you don't want to be anywhere near the perimeter. But to dig out, and it would be a mix of both thinking the practicality of the distance and this and that, but you'd also need to feel out the land. I would be able to find the right spot where I would know where to put my little cabin at the edge of the creek, and I would know just where to dig out the bear den. Or who knows? Like, yeah, fucking given how magic is, I might even set out to do that and just realize, oh, okay, nope, there's a bear den right there. So to either go build a place right by a bear den, if it's I show up to one, or to dig one out. And then just to spend as long as it takes to become best friends with the bear that moves in there. I spend a ridiculous amount of time outside with wild animals. Spend like 8 hours out there some days. Just to take that on, in a way, is like a magical task, sort of a whatever. But to take on the task of becoming best friends with a bear. And also in that vision, there's no fucking internet. That also involves just cutting everyone off. But imagine how safe I would be. Hanging around with a black bear all day. And if I went deep into the woods, because I have a good relationship to the spirit here of this land, wouldn't be just getting to know that bear. It'd be getting, obviously, to know all the other wildlife, and I'd make friends with chipmunks and such. I'd get to know the spirit of that land, get to know that creek. The deep woods has such a protective energy. The land where I am now is beautiful. I'm not putting down the land I'm on at all. But it's not separate from society. I'm on a farm. And the family that has lived here other than me, my ancestors who have lived here, were social and very big parts of society. In fact, my great aunt and uncle my great uncle who lived his whole life here, ran Blacks for the longest time. It was the only store in the nearest town. It's like they were a big part. So this land is very connected to society. It's been providing food for people. And it's part of the world. It's farmland. Deep woods is something different. If I went into the deep woods and developed the relationship with that nature energy instead of this one, made friends with a black bear, then nobody would fuck with me. And fuck, would that be nice? Ranted for almost an hour without looking at the chat. All right. End of rant. We have two choices. Either I end the stream now and I'll read through what everyone's written by just pulling the video up. Or I go take a piss break, I come back, I read through the chat, and maybe respond or maybe don't. What do we do? Do we just end it here? So, or do I take a break for a minute? Like, do any of you want to hang out? Like, I take a break, come back, and we'll see if any chatting happens, or do we just end it now? I'm too tired, so I don't even care who answers. Somebody else pick. All right, T-Bone. I'll be back. Fucking. I am so tired. I said I'll be back, and then I hit the button end stream. Yeah, my name's Mercury. Or Merc for short. So I would have made a yeah. Thank you, YouTube, for having it pop up and say, "Are you sure you want to end stream?" Because otherwise I would have said, "All right, I'll be right back," and then ended the stream. I was trying to mute it. All right, I will be right back. All right, I'm back. This is just I'm going to take like a moment silently and read through. I'm not going to respond to the old shit because it was an hour ago and I'm sure they're not here, but I want to read what was written, and my brain needs a break from talking. I am so fucking tired. So even though I'm back, it's going to be boring for a minute. John Nash, you're right, Gloff. You're probably not still here. That's the Beautiful Mind guy. John Nash. All right, so I'm back, but I'm still on break mode. Then I will start responding to new stuff. So if you're here and you'll wait out this boring part, we can chat back and forth a little bit, unless my brain seizes up. Hypnagogia? Hypnagogia? State between sleep and wakefulness? I did not know the name for that. I love that state. Like when I'm not in, when I don't have an external problem irritating me. And so I'm in any kind of decent state, like shape overall, then I love that state between awake and asleep. I sometimes like meditate to achieve that state. And there's times where I can keep myself in that state for like a half hour, not sure how much more than an hour, but I know I've achieved that state for up to an hour. I find a really good way to achieve that state. For me, part of the lie down, get comfortable, and you do all your normal meditation to connect to the inner world. And you put a podcast on, something you've already heard, so it's not too interesting, something you don't mind absorbing subconsciously. It's like some Alan Watts or, you know, a podcast on a subject like that's good. Manly P. Hall, fucking fantastic for doing this with. And something you've already heard. So what you'll realize when you hit that state, you'll realize that your ears are still hearing that, but that it no longer makes sense at one point. And then you can get to a place where you realize, because you can be, you can use once you no longer have any awareness of the sounds, yet you also haven't fallen fully asleep. It's, you use that as a way to gauge how far you're actually detaching towards falling asleep. But like you put that on and then you rest and relax and like as if you're going to go to sleep, but you just get yourself to that in-between state. But I didn't know the name for it. So yeah, I shouldn't be responding to old stuff. I'm going to go back to doing what I said I was going to do. And yeah, you didn't misspeak, Mark. Don't worry about it. Nothing to apologize for. Okay, so I'm down to the end. So near the end, someone mentions two people who lived with bears for years and eventually their bear friend killed them. Yeah, that version of me that just goes away to that though, that wouldn't bother me. I could be friends with a bear for like decades and then it could eat me. And that wouldn't upset me. Or not the part of me that wants to go do that. I mean, I don't want a painful death, obviously. I don't want any more pain than is necessary. But most deaths are painful. If I had to choose between being eaten by a wild animal or going through an equal amount of pain in a car accident, I'd rather get eaten by the wild animal because that's fucking cool. Because then you're best friends with the bear for 10 years and then you become part of the bear and you're out of this fucking shithole. So Mr. Friendly wrote, bro, the title, you shouldn't put energy into negative thoughts. What's the title? Isn't the title a question? And I agree that you shouldn't put energy into negative thoughts. And there are times I put titles that are okay. Yeah. There's probably plenty of people who have not heard me say this. Fuck, how do I put this into words? I'm too tired. You can't put energy into negative thoughts, like part of cognitive CBT and yeah, like magical practices, mindfulness, all that. You don't add energy to negative thoughts, but you also can't suppress negative thoughts, push them into the shadow, there's a line to walk. And what I've noticed also is, like I mentioned, that I've been thinking recently, now and then it comes to mind when me and Dr. Amate were discussing it. And like he was, because I often see both sides of things, I'll verbalize the opposite of what the person's saying, but anyway, Dr. Amate was, expressing the need to allow yourself to feel wronged when you've been wronged. And I was verbalizing the need to forgive when you've been wronged. And that's just it. You have to do both. You can't add to the negativity unnecessarily. And you do that when you add to the negativity when not only are you not ready to forgive or not trying to forgive, but you're fueling it. But you also can't just force yourself to forgive and like suppress that you've ever like you have to allow the natural reaction. So sometimes I have titles, or sometimes I express a point of view that I am not expressing it because I'm putting it into the world. I am not trying to add energy to that. I'm sharing because for me, it's about, there are times when I have to allow myself to feel wronged by being wrong, harmed. And to, in that moment, not be feeling, I have to allow that part of me to feel that. And then when it wants to lash out, when it wants to build on that, that's when I have to be like, no, it's understandable you feel that way. It's like one part of me speaking to another. You are right from where you are. Like, this wasn't right. But we, the rest of the system, are not going to go along with this. We will still be forgiving and blah, 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 blah. But you also have to allow it. And so times I share what I'm not sharing the details of the darknesses I encounter or the demons I deal with to spread that. I am sharing it because I know there are other people who encounter these emotional states, and I am verbalizing what it's like to be there so that I can also then at other times like be verbalizing how I deal with that. So it was Timothy Treadwell and girlfriend that got eaten by bears. It's on YouTube. Yeah, that part of me, though, just wants to go deep in and doesn't care about that kind of risk deep in the woods. But anyway, I'm caught up now. Unless the chat isn't working, nobody's writing anything new. But I'm caught up and will respond if someone writes something. And welcome, Mr. Friendly. It seems you're new here. Okay, so the whole time that I was ranting, people wrote stuff. And now that I'm caught up. All right, so for the few of you that stuck this out and are still sitting there, if nobody writes anything, you were waiting around for nothing, and I should have just stopped before the break. My brain's exhausted and I have nothing coming to say. But because some of you are still here and I said I was going to interact, I can interact a bit. But someone will have to write something. And if anyone is, I'm not seeing it. The last message I see is Mr. Friendly wrote, being entertaining on a stream is exhausting. So if anyone's written anything since then, it's not working. But what about you, T-Bone? You're the one that wrote Let's Hang, right? Yeah, you were the person that responded. Told me to come back because you wanted to hang out. So you still here? How long is it polite to wait for T-Bone or anyone else to write anything? I don't want to just end it immediately because there's a chance T-Bone went away from their computer for a minute because I said I was going to take a break and come back. So I don't want to just end it because I don't like leaving people hanging. But nobody's saying anything at all now. What do I do? Give it 5 minutes? Yeah, I'll give it 5 minutes. Mr. Friendly says, if you've got things to do, then you shouldn't hang around. I have things to do in the sense that there's always something to do, but I have nothing I need to go do. Long as it doesn't start raining, all I'm going to do when I get off this stream is go outside and spend the rest of my day with animals. And I've still got 8 hours till the sun goes down. So I've got 8 hours to spend with animals. And that's, I think, all I'm going to do all day once I get off the stream. So I'm not in any rush. Well, it'll be whatever animals are outside, but I go out into my yard. There's 2 spots I like to hang out at the moment. I go out and throw around some bird seed. So there's the birds to watch. But the birds don't come right over to me. But at the moment, there's, let's see, Romeo, Frankie, Lexi, Woody Woodpecker, Nebula, Mother Abigail, Silverback, Scatter. At the moment, there's 8 chipmunks around this year that I know well enough to have named them. There's a few more chipmunks around as well. That, due to dominance hierarchies and chipmunk wars, don't get access to me enough for me to have gotten to know and name them. But there's 8 chipmunks at the moment. Any one of those 8 could be around. There's Red Sonia. She's a red squirrel. She's been around every day recently. And then there's this year, the groundhog I know is named Dee Dee. She moved her den down once her babies were ready to start coming out. She moved her den down into the back to get the babies away from the people and such in the yard. So she's not around every day anymore. But I see her occasionally. She could be around. But those are all the animals I know. They eat out of my hand. I can pet them, that kind of shit. The other kinds of animals I see around, other than birds, there's a skunk I see around now and then. It doesn't come too close. And there's a raccoon that's been around. I've seen her a couple times, and she's come up to about 5 feet away from me. She's hung out picking up peanuts around and come within about 5 feet. But she's never come right up to me yet. I've only seen her a couple times. Saw a red fox. It didn't approach. It also didn't run. I saw it. At its closest, it was about 50 feet. There's wild turkeys around sometimes, although I guess that's a bird. Plenty of birds. I don't know if I'm forgetting anyone. But yeah, that's the kind of wild animals. And yeah, everything that I'm mentioning, well, I mean, not the fox and not the skunk. I've never seen the skunk eating any of the seeds. Everything else, like even the raccoon, it's all just yeah. I get a wild bird seed mix from like the feed mill, those big sacks. It's just labeled wild bird seed with peanuts, and like the raccoon, um, seems to only eat the peanuts. The groundhogs, because I've known two groundhogs, both of them only eat the peanuts when, like, if it's scattered, the groundhogs will only eat the peanuts. They'll just go around and pick up the peanuts. But if you have a handful of seed, the groundhogs will eat like the whole mix. So Gwen and Dee Dee, if it's scattered, they don't try to pick up the sunflower seeds or anything else. They just go around to get the peanuts. But if I hold a handful of like the seed with the peanuts mixed in, the groundhogs will just eat a handful of birdseed. But they prefer it if it's got a higher ratio of peanuts. And the red squirrel, because at first, like the first 2 years I was doing this, yeah, I think this is like the third year that I've been doing this. The first 2 years, like there have been red squirrels around the yard, but they didn't eat any of the bird seed at all. Like not even just when I'm outside, because I also like spread it around when I'm not, like when I'm inside and I can see through watch through the windows sometimes the animals. The red squirrels did not used to eat the like anything from the bird seed at all. And red squirrels really don't like chipmunks. They bully the shit out of them. So the red squirrels, if I was inside the first and second year, I would sometimes see the red squirrels run out where the bird seed is and just bully all the fucking chipmunks away. But then the red squirrel wouldn't eat anything from the seeds at all. I think they eat mostly like pine nuts. Then at the end of the second summer, I noticed two red squirrels started going through, and they seemed to be picking up just the peanuts. They didn't do it often, but I saw them first like when I was inside, and then sometimes when I was outside, there was one or two red squirrels that would occasionally come up and collect some of the peanuts, but they never came right over to me. But this year's the first time one of the red squirrels this year the first day I saw her, she came right over, actually. There was no effort in making friends with her. And since then, she, like, every day comes, and even if it's just scattered outside, she goes and gathers the peanuts. She seems to just collect the peanuts if it's scattered. But again, with her as well, she will she'll eat sunflower seeds and more out of my hand. And not the way, because with the groundhog, it's just taking big bites. Like a squirrel picks things up one at a time. But it's like, I don't know what changed about the squirrel that it's collecting peanuts every day now. It didn't used to. And I saw two chipmunks go to war over me 2 days ago. I can describe that if anyone's interested. That suddenly occurs to me that the politics and behavior of the animals in my yard is just infinitely fascinating to me. But it just occurred to me that may be the boringest shit to listen to. And Digital Garage asks how the journey's going. It's fucking rough. Yeah, and I don't want to go back into that. My last few live streams cover how I've been doing lately. All right, do we wrap it up there, or do you want to hear about chipmunk politics? Because I could talk about that. It's a pleasant thing to think about. But logically, I assume that's kind of boring to other people. And it's been 10 minutes, so T-Bone isn't coming back, I don't think. All right, you want to hear about chipmunk politics? All right. There's the yard, and then there's the fringe. So the yard is right beside my house. And yeah, if I'm sitting in the yard out here, I can open the windows and put on a podcast or music. And like chipmunks have areas, and there's a dominance hierarchy in each area. It's almost gangs having, this gang controls this block. This in my yard, Romeo's the one that controls the yard. He's the dominant chipmunk. The other end of the yard, it's like the borderline between the yard and what I call the fringe, and I call it the fringe because it's the territory where I have a long driveway with trees down each side. So it's cool. There's like this, like 2 rows of columns. But anyway, like the driveway and the fields on either side are one territory. The yard is one territory. And right where the driveway starts, so at the end of the column of trees, if I sit there, I'm right at the edge. But it's closer. It's just outside of Romeo's territory. It's within the fringe of the chipmunk territory. So there's someone else is in charge over there. And so far this year, the dominant chipmunk, and I've only been going over to the second area. I've had a rough time this year. So for some reason, I hadn't been out there until like 2 weeks ago, or a week. Anyway, I'd just been hanging out in the yard, but I went out there and to meet who was living out there this year. And so I named the dominant one Mother Abigail. And then Nebula I named the other one. Nebula is just a little kid. She's not full grown. So she was in the spring, I think. Or she was born in the winter. Chipmunks. Anyway. So the 2 chipmunks, the only 2. No, sorry. And there's a third one back there, but it hasn't come up and eaten out of my hand that I know of. So it doesn't have a name. It hasn't come close enough. Mother Abigail won't let it fucking anywhere near me. She'll let Nebula eat around me, but not come too close. So it's like 2 days ago, I'd spent some time with the squirrel in the yard, and I thought I'm going to go down and check on Mother Abigail and Nebula. Also, Mother Abigail's the only one this year that's learned the command up. She knows that. I can be holding a handful of seeds, and if I say up to Mother Abigail. Although, last year, the 2 chipmunks that learned that command big run up my arm to my hand. For some reason, Mother Abigail, when I say up, instead of climbing me, she jumps from the ground up into my hand. But anyway, I'm walking over there, and as I'm walking towards it, there's birds around and 2 chipmunks. So I think it's Mother Abigail and Nebula. As I'm approaching, the birds take off, which is normal. But when the birds took off, both chipmunks took off. That's weird because they know me really well already. Often when I'm walking towards them, they come towards me, not run away. But I thought, maybe it was just the birds taking off startled them. So I sit down, get a handful of seed, and that I haven't seen before. like maybe I've seen it last year or something and it wasn't one I knew well, but like I had not seen this chipmunk this year at all. I don't know if it's a male or a female, but this chipmunk is the biggest chipmunk I've seen this year. And it can be hard to compare chipmunk sizes because they're all so small. But like, this is the biggest chipmunk around. It's bigger than Romeo. And Romeo's the toughest chipmunk around that I've seen this year. But this chipmunk's like huge for a chipmunk. And down its back, because chipmunks have a mix of gray and brown, like down their back, this chipmunk was much more gray than brown. Really gray, really big, and it was like pristine. Most chipmunks have little marks from where they've lost fur, or especially chipmunks out in the fringes. Some of them have a lot of scars. Like Mother Abigail has a huge scar in her leg and patches of fur missing. Or Romeo's has half his tail gone. But this chipmunk was pristine. Full tail. The tail's big and fluffy. And all its fur is just pristine. So I named this one Silverback. And Silverback just came right over to me and started eating out of my hand. Like there was no looking at me from a distance, no nothing. I was so shocked at that. And then I see a chipmunk come out of the grass, go towards me, see Silverback there, and just take off. And at first, I thought it was Mother Abigail. And so I thought what had happened was Silverback moved in, took over. And as I saw this chipmunk, this happened a couple times. So I was getting a limited view, but this chipmunk looked rough. And Mother Abigail already had some scars and shit, but this chipmunk looked really rough. So I was like, so at first I thought, okay, Silverback came in, kicked the shit out of her, and is in charge now. Then at one point when Silverback was gone, because Silverback actually has to travel really far to get to that spot. Its home is somewhere out back watching, because they come, collect seeds, take it, put it away, come back. And when Silverback was gone, what I thought was Mother Abigail came over. But instead of eating out of my hand, it just started eating the seeds that were on the ground around my hand. And it was even pressed up right against my hand, but wasn't eating out of my hand. And at first I thought it was just that she was like in some sort of shock from having lost the dominance position there and that she was just acting weird. Then I look closer and I'm like, holy shit, no, this is a different chipmunk too. And like, I got to look, there wasn't the scar in the leg. And then also I got to look and it's like, no, this one's actually a male. So I ended up naming this one Scatter because it was at first just ran off every time it saw Silverback. It was just took off. But Scatter was in rough shape. Big piece missing out of his ear, fur all over the place, torn out, ratty tail that's been pulled apart. And he just seemed shell-shocked. Until the time where it actually came right over to me. As soon as I realized it was a different chipmunk. And so this time it's sitting right behind my hand, which I thought even that it was like hiding. And that the moment Silverback came back, he was just going to be gone. I see Silverback coming along the fence line, coming over. And I'm even like warning Scatter. I'm like, it's coming back. Like, do you want to take off? But that time, instead of running when it saw Silverback came up to about a foot away, like in front of me, sort of to the side, and Scatter just ran at Silverback. Usually, when chipmunks charge each other, the other one just runs. Rarely is there even any nipping. Occasionally, I see them like give one nip, especially if the subordinate chipmunk has pushed the line too far. And I've a couple times seen two chipmunks where the chipmunk chasing the other one away does jump. You see the two of them kind of do a sort of single tumble and run off. but that's the most fighting I've ever seen. Scatter ran at Silverback. Silverback didn't back down. They jumped at each other and they locked into a ball. And like in cartoons, when you see two things fighting and they're just rolling in a ball, that is literally what the chipmunks did for like a full minute. They just were locked into each other, rolling around this ball of fucking all over the place, biting and tearing at each other. And then like they both took off. When Silverback came back, big patches of fur gone. And then there was one or two times it's like Silverback came back, ate out of my hand, left, and then Scatter came, and Scatter was rough to begin with. After that, like his leg was bleeding. He was bleeding out of his back in multiple places. And they each like took a turn. Then it happened where they both came back at the same time. And I forget how many times overall, but 3 or 4 more times. These two chipmunks just, it's like, yeah, if they came back at the same time, neither of them were backing down. Like 99% of the time with chipmunk politics, it's established who's higher than the other. It's just an enforcement of, it's a negotiation of boundaries and pushing lines. But this was like absolutely both chipmunks, which I had just met both of them. Both of those chipmunks fucking for the rest of that day. And it was later in the day. So it was only, I don't know, an hour or 2 or maybe 3. But it was like if they came one at a time, things were fine. But when they both showed up at the same time, neither of them backed down until they'd already like fought it the fuck out. And by the end, both chipmunks were bleeding in multiple places, but neither of them gave up. I have not seen Silverback since. Or I don't know that I have. I actually do think I saw at a distance Silverback back here. I definitely did not see Silverback either in the yard or in that spot since then. But I do think I saw Silverback in an area back there, like from a distance. But Scatter appears to be the one in charge now down there. And fuck is he in rough shape. He's got a limp. And, he looks so torn up. But he won out. I hung out down there with him for a while. And I had been worried Mother Abigail was chased off. But Mother Abigail's still down there. She seems to have accepted a subordinate position to Scatter. And Scatter doesn't bully her. Scatter lets her hang out and eat seeds near me. She doesn't try to approach when Scatter's there eating out of my hand. But when Scatter's not there, she's her old self. I can say up, and she jumps up. But also Mother Abigail has a whole bunch of fucking new scars. And yesterday I saw 2 other new chipmunks. Yeah, because I saw Nebula. Nebula's fine. The small one is the only chipmunk down there that doesn't have any fucking marks. But when anyone chases her, whether it's the dominant chipmunk or not, Nebula just turns and runs. So Nebula doesn't try to approach me when anyone else is around. She stays way the fuck like at the edge, approaches cautiously, and when anyone chases her, she runs. So the little kid back there is still pristine. But every other chipmunk out in the fringes, because I met 2 new ones. I don't know where the fuck they came from. Neither of them were Silverback. And they were all torn to fuck as well. So it's like a whole bunch of new chipmunks moved into the fringe recently. and they've been fighting over who's in charge. It seems like Silverback got run out. Scatter won. But the former dominant, Mother Abigail, she didn't leave. She's still there. She just accepted a second. She's secondary. And Romeo yesterday, for the first time, went into the fringes to see me. Romeo usually doesn't go there at all. Like, Romeo defends the yard, and Romeo fucking defends the yard. He lets other chipmunks at a distance, like some, but he doesn't let anyone right near me. He does not like it when the groundhog comes around, because no other rodent can fuck with Dee Dee. And he doesn't like it when the squirrel's around. But the squirrel's been fucking awesome, because squirrels and chipmunks do not get along. Red Sonja's been getting along really, really well with the chipmunks. Sonja and Romeo will actually be right beside each other in front of me and okay with each other sometimes. She chases chipmunks a little, but almost not at all anymore. But there was one day where she chased Romeo, and this is the first time I've ever seen a chipmunk push back at all. It's like, she darted after Romeo. Romeo goes running. She stops because she's chased him far away. And this was like her being nice, because typically she would keep chasing and she would nip and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, she actually didn't chase him that far. She was being nice. She stops. The second she stopped, Romeo turned and charged her and jumped, like, made contact with her and like startled her or whatever enough that she ran from him for a second. So it's like, he turned the tables, charged the red squirrel, got her to back up, and then she turned and darted at him again and chased him off further. But so Romeo's a tough chipmunk. But politically, he's completely subordinate down there. It's like, when he went down to see me in the fringe, if any other chipmunk, even a subordinate chipmunk down there, like even if Nebula came out, he backed up a bit in the direction of his territory. And like, with the balls he has against a red squirrel, I don't think he's afraid of all the chipmunks fighting down there, especially because every chipmunk down there is torn to shit already, and Romeo's like got his old scars, but he's in great shape. So I don't get the feeling at all that Romeo's scared down there. It's that Romeo owns this yard. That's the nearest neighbor. And I think he was being very polite visiting me down there, because he expects that when they come down here. And nobody tried to chase him off. Like, there was no fucking around. Scatter and Romeo were within a foot of each other. And nobody tried to fuck with Romeo, but Romeo voluntarily took the subordinate position. He always positioned himself so that he was the chipmunk closest to his own territory, which would also be positioning him further from me. It's like, even if the other chipmunk wasn't fucking with him, if one chipmunk moved further than him, he would move back around to show that. Anyway, so yeah, that's been the recent chipmunk politics, which I find endlessly fascinating. I saw Watership Down, I think, when I was a kid, but am not remembering it at all. All right, PL says, PL, by the way, hope you're well. I do not like that rhymed. That made me feel like an idiot. Says, people need purpose in their lives. You light up when speaking about animals. Perhaps you might find a way to work with animals in order to achieve a sense of purpose. Yes, fuck, I love those animals. Okay, on the one hand, for my own sake, I have a deep sense of purpose that is entirely spiritual. It on its own is enough for me. However, on that spiritual path, I committed to helping the world if the world asks me for help. Like not going out and evangelizing, not looking for a problem to solve, but that if I retreated into my own space, did my self-work, and ignored the world. It's one of the ways I got, because, I used to be down all kinds of conspiracy theory rabbit holes and blah, blah, blah. And it's true. It's the end of the world. It's the apocalypse. Whatever that means, whether it's that the world will be unrecognizably better in the future, moving into a golden age, or whether I just saw Lex Friedman and Eric Weinstein's new podcast. And not Eric, Brett. But Brett says when he runs the calculations, he does not think there is a very good chance humanity is going to survive. But one of the ways I dealt with that was to disconnect from the world, to accept going down with the ship if it goes down, and not to worry about that at all. It's like to disconnect totally from responsibility for what's happening outside of my bubble. That was how I entered isolation, to do like my self-work for all this time. I needed to separate from the world. But like on my spiritual path, I needed also to love the world and blah, blah, blah. Or I was assisting in ways of meditation and prayer and magic. But part of the whole thing was also making like the deal with the universe that I'm going to go into this bubble, do my self-work, and not worry about the fact that it's the end of the world. Like, let it be whatever end of the world it's going to be. I just go into my bubble, do the self-work, and go along for the ride. That included accepting that if the universe needs anything from me, it will ask. And sometimes it felt like the universe needed prayer, or needed so in weird mystic ways I was interacting with humanity, but not direct. But it's that promise that I made, that if the universe comes, and it's like very specific, I don't just have to say yes to everything. It's hard to put in words, because when I communicate with my angel, it's not in words. It's like in this kind of psychic like the non-linguistic kind of shit. Anyway, to kind of paraphrase, the promise is that if the universe asks me for something, and I'm capable of giving it, and if my intuition aligns with that the universe is asking me to do this, because people will ask you to do all kinds of shit. I've been asked to help kidnap somebody. That's not the universe saying you got to help this person kidnap somebody. That's the universe saying, in fact, you got to help this guy realize he shouldn't be kidnapping anyone. So it involves all that kind of stuff. But if someone asks me for something, and then it seems to me that my angel also agrees that I should provide that assistance, then it's if I'm capable of doing it, I'm supposed to. And so when it comes to working with the world, I don't know. That level of purpose where it comes to a practicality being acted out in the world, that level's difficult on me. Like Peterson's idea of carrying the heaviest load you can and you find purpose, or you find meaning and purpose. It's like, okay, yes, there's meaning in it, but fuck, it's difficult on me to do the interactive layer. And the mystical shit is also full of purpose. This deep sense of purpose that you can find if you lock yourself away from the world for years. That's very fucking fulfilling. And so that's me ranting around, could I, to come back to the grounded level, because my work with animals is already integrated into the spirit mystic level. But to bring it down to the question of, could I somehow use my relationship with animals down on a practical level, and have some sort of practical purpose to it? I think it's possible that could happen. I'm putting no pressure on myself to, like, I'm very aware it's not up to me. Like, yes, it's partly up to me, but it's also partly up to the universe. I can't have another series of disasters occur and even keep up doing a minimal amount on the channel. So it's possible this will end at some point soon because of something outside of myself, beyond my control. Or it's possible that the environment could adapt to something more suitable to whatever strange variety of orchid I am, and I could do much better. If the universe decides to go that way. If I ever reach a place where there's nobody attacking me, there's no outside disasters for a couple years, and that even there's some sort of new support and resources come in, I do think that if I had a more stable life, like I discussed the other day, that video that one of you recommended from Academy of Ideas that was comparing Carl Jung's mysticism to sort of Nietzsche's, and the necessity of the stable environment for Carl Jung. Like the way he even said himself, he could not have done the mystical work he did if he had not had such a grounded, orderly life. Like he had his degree, his job, his family, his place in the community. And he said himself that he was fully aware that if he did not have those things to ground him, and he didn't have that to step into when he came out of his mysticism, that he would have gone mad, or, just he couldn't have. So on the off chance that one day I've got a more stable environment, it's possible I could do vastly more than what I've done so far. Given the proper resources, I think I could host retreat events well. And I think that would be where my ability to connect to both the animals and the energy of the land and whatnot. If I had a place, life was stable so that I'm not doing fucking live streams. Like, at the moment, the only shit I'm providing on the channel is I'm sharing what it's like to go through fucking breakdown shit to help other people understand, I guess. But it's like, this is an attempt to make lemonade at the moment. It's like outside circumstances are fucking chaotic. I've got somebody attacking me. I'm breaking down. I can't hold this shit together. And so I'm trying to take all those fucking hellish lemons and squeeze anything good out of them. I feel like that's all I'm doing through the channel right now, is making the most of what I can do in a state like this. I guess I can do live streams now and then talking about what it's like to go through this, but that's all I can do. I can't do private sessions. I can't do podcasts. I can't do fucking group events when I'm going through this kind of shit. stuff got a bit better, I could start doing lunatic patrols and podcasts and that kind of shit. But if one day I actually had a more stable environment, outside problems weren't actively attacking me. I actually had something like that for a while. I think I could put together a decent retreat. It wouldn't be what a normal human being consider. Like, yeah, it wouldn't be like a luxury retreat or anything. It would be a weird fucking lunatic mystical retreat. I think I could create a great spot where there's some cheap little cabins and a spot to have a fire, and that I could tame the animals in that area, connect to the spirit of the land. And like when I think about private sessions I've done that people have found so helpful, or the group events we did that people liked. My enemy says lunatic patrols, ? Lunatic calling. There were times where I would post a Zoom link and we got together, talk for hours, or sometimes just talk. It was like us all getting together and hanging out. So kind of a group session. And like we wouldn't post anything. It wasn't it wasn't for the channel. It was like a private fucking hangouts. We called them lunatic patrols. It was Zoom hangouts or... Oh, and hey, Levi, did I answer you? No, I didn't see that yet. If you're still here, Levi says, had a bad few weeks because my cat died a few weeks ago. Neighbor reversed into... I'm sorry to hear that, man. Yeah, and life has been brutal for me at the moment, too. But anyway, back to what I was just saying. If one day I had like an external environment that was safer, and I had the resources, I think I could put together a nice little retreat. And both a one-on-one session with somebody, as powerful as that can be over Zoom, I just think that if we were sitting in a sacred space in nature, 5 feet apart facing each other and talking, and if we were hand feeding wild animals while we talked about their problems, that I think that would be even more powerfully healing. Or as great as those lunatic patrols were, a dozen of us hanging out, talking about something really deep. I just think that if we were all sitting around a bonfire in a sacred space, and again, with wild animals around, although, a bonfire at night. And I just think that it could be really, really powerful to have those kinds of group conversations or one-on-one conversations, or even just to allow it as a space. Like say I had a couple little cabins, it could even be a time where people use that for a silent retreat and I don't even interact with them. Like there could be different kinds of events or retreats. But also, even if I just made a space like that with some cabins and there's, the place to have a fire and, you just stock it with a bit of food. Then if someone wanted to go on silent retreat, it's like I could just show them around, show them where the food is and shit, just eat, and then give them that place for 48 hours so that they can meditate and, do whatever spiritual practices they want to do, and that they could be going out and hand feeding chipmunks during the day. I think that could be a really healing thing for people. So that's the one way I see that skill set of making friends with wild animals could be incorporated into something practical with some purpose. But my life is nowhere near what it needs to be for me to do that. And I've been thinking about wild animals for too long without actually seeing one. So I have a really strong desire now to go outside. I hope someone found something useless in whatever bullshit I rambled on about. I hope things get better for all of us. God bless. Lunatic love to everyone.